The signature he didn't deserve it was a late afternoon in Savannah, Georgia, the kind where the air hung thick with humidity and unspoken truths. The ceiling fan above me turned lazily, as though even it couldn't summon the energy for confrontation. I sat in the living room I had built with my own hands, in a home that once felt like a promise. The divorce papers in my lap were crisp, formal, final. My name, Nina Carrington, was typed neatly at the top. At the bottom was the space I had just signed, my pen leaving behind something heavier than ink. Across from me, lounging without an ounce of discomfort, was Elliot, my soon-to-be ex-husband. He sat there on the linen armchair that I had imported from Italy, the one he always said was too stiff. Now, suddenly, he seemed perfectly at ease in it. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, and beside him, as though she belonged there, sat Talia, the woman he had once introduced as just a copywriter from the agency. Her hand was curled possessively around his, a silent declaration of replacement. "So you're really leaving," Elliot said, tilting his head as if the idea was vaguely amusing to him. "After everything we've been through." I met his gaze with the kind of silence that burns more than any insult. "Yes," I said evenly, placing the signed papers on the glass coffee table I had designed myself, etched with antique brass trim. "Just so we're clear, I'm taking everything that's mine." Talia glanced around the room, her eyes wide and greedy. Or maybe just stupid. Her gaze lingered on the curated gallery wall above the fireplace, the hand-thrown pottery on the mantel, the bold yet soft rug that grounded the room. She smiled, running her hand over the velvet of the couch, as if it were already hers. "This place is perfect," she said softly, almost to herself. "It's like a magazine spread. I've always wanted something like this." I didn't correct her. Let her believe this was all Elliot's doing. Let her believe the beauty of this place was his to offer. "You can take your clothes, your little keepsakes, whatever," Elliot added, waving a hand dismissively. "Honestly, most of it just reminds me of how miserable things were." I nodded, letting the insult slide past me like water off stone. "The movers will be here at 8 tomorrow. You may want to sleep elsewhere tonight." He laughed, but I saw it, the flicker of unease, the brief crease in his forehead. Talia said nothing, but her grip on his hand tightened. Let me rewind, just for a moment. I'm Nina, 34 years old, an interior architect and preservation consultant. I specialize in restoring historic homes throughout the Deep South. I met Elliot 3 years ago when he was hired to manage the legal side of a renovation project I was leading in Charleston. He was polished, confident, made jokes that sounded like compliments, but were really observations. We married after just 11 months. Too fast, my friend said. Too fast, I eventually realized. He'd inherited this house from his grandmother, a neglected Victorian in Savannah's historic district. The bones were good, the details intricate, but the years had not been kind. Water damage, sagging floors, faded wallpaper from a decade that tried to forget it existed. I fell in love, not with Elliot, but with the house. While he was busy working late hours at his law firm, I spent weekends scraping paint, sourcing reclaimed wood, and restoring every window sash by hand. The renovation took nearly 2 years and more money than he would have ever budgeted, except it wasn't his money. It was mine. My savings, my connections, my vision. I turned that husk of a house into a living piece of art. I documented everything. Not just because I'm a professional, but because I've always believed in receipts, the literal and metaphorical kind. Somewhere deep down, I think I knew I might need them. The emotional distance with Elliot started early. He mocked my attachment to things, accused me of caring more about textures and lighting than conversations. He'd leave dirty dishes after promising to help, roll his eyes when I explained the rationale behind design decisions. He didn't see the work. He only saw the result. 6 months ago, I found out about Talia, the usual way. Emails, texts, receipts for weekends he said were conferences. She was younger. Prettier in that curated, Instagram-filtered way. A lover of coastal aesthetics, faux bohemian vibes, and secondhand quotes about manifesting abundance. The real gut punch came when I read a message she'd sent to a friend. Open quote. "He's amazing. I mean, this house? His style? I didn't know men could have such taste." Close quote. I read that line 10 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I understood it too well. She thought Elliot had designed this house. She thought he'd built it. He hadn't. I had. When I confronted him, Elliot didn't deny it. He shrugged, said, "Things happen. Maybe we weren't right." Then, with a smirk, "But I'm glad you at least made the place livable." That night, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, pulled up my digital archive, and started compiling an asset list. Furniture, fixtures, art, decor, everything I'd purchased, everything I could legally and morally claim as mine. By the time I finished, the file had 187 entries, cross-referenced with receipts, dates, and high-resolution photos. I booked the best moving company in the city. Quiet, professional, discreet. I told them to come prepared. I told them we were taking it all. Now, as I stood in the center of the room, the papers signed, the final words exchanged, I realized something. This wasn't the end of a relationship. This was a repossession. He could keep the walls, the address, the title, but I would take everything else, every piece of beauty I had brought into his life. And tomorrow morning, he would wake up surrounded by echoes. The movers arrived just before dawn. 3 trucks, unbranded and quiet, like a whisper in the thick Savannah fog. They parked along the street, engines idling softly. I greeted them at the front gate in jeans and a faded cotton shirt, clipboard in hand. There was no fanfare, no chaos, only precision. "Everything on this list," I said, handing the foreman a thick folder. "Item by item, nothing extra, nothing less." They nodded, professional, polite. The kind of team that had seen heartbreak packaged in boxes before. Inside, the house still smelled faintly of bergamot and cedarwood, the signature scent I had curated with care. I took one last glance around the living room, the glass coffee table I'd designed, the Moroccan rug from a boutique in New Orleans, the custom-built bookshelves, the fireplace mirror I found at a flea market and restored by hand. All of it, mine. I watched as they started their work, wrapping each item in layers of thick cloth and bubble wrap. Art came down from the walls. Vases were emptied, chairs, tables, sculptures, all lifted with care and precision. No scraping, no breaking, no mess. They worked like ghosts, erasing me from the house I had once made a home. I moved room to room, checking things off the list. The kitchen was stripped first. My copper pots, vintage dishware, hand-carved cutting boards. From the master bedroom, I took the bed. Yes, even the mattress, the nightstands, and the chandelier I had installed by climbing a 15-foot ladder myself when Elliot was too busy to help. He didn't deserve to sleep beneath it. By 10 a.m., it was nearly done. Elliot hadn't come downstairs. Either he was sleeping off his ego or pretending none of this was happening. Talia's car was gone. Perhaps she sensed that today was not a good day to play homemaker. Smart of her. In the dining room, the team paused in front of a large reclaimed wood table. It had taken me 8 months to design, and another 3 for the local craftsmen to build. I had sealed it myself with a mixture of beeswax and linseed oil, giving it a warm sheen that made light dance across its surface. "Are we taking this?" the foreman asked. I nodded. "Yes, but leave the chairs." He looked confused. I smiled faintly. "Let him sit in silence," I said. The final touch was in the entryway, the antique mirror from Charleston, the one with gilt edges and a small crack in the bottom corner, a flaw that made it real. I had found it in a crumbling estate sale and carried it 2 blocks by myself when no one offered to help. Elliot had hated that mirror, said it was haunted. I loved it because it reflected not just what was, but what had survived. I took it down last. When the last box was loaded, I did one final walkthrough. The echo in each room felt louder now. Not empty, but hollow, like something had been pulled out by the roots. I left the walls bare, the closets empty, the bathroom without a single towel or toothbrush. Even the toilet paper holder was bare. I didn't need to be petty, just precise. Only one thing remained. On the kitchen island, the granite I had begged him not to cheapen, I placed a small black envelope. Inside it was a simple card. On it, in my handwriting, open quote, "This house was once a home, now it's just your responsibility," close quote. And beneath that, open quote, "Nina," close quote. As I stepped outside, the sun had broken through the clouds. The humidity still clung to my skin, but I felt lighter, freer. I climbed into my car, packed neatly with only a week's worth of clothes and a thumb drive containing my business assets. I had rented a short-term apartment across town, one with plain walls and wide windows. It would do for now. Beauty could be built again. As I drove away, I glanced at the house in the rearview mirror. It looked exactly the same from the outside. White columns, blue shutters, creeping ivy up the side wall, a picturesque shell. But I knew better. The soul was gone. And Elliot? He would learn soon enough that money could not buy atmosphere. That design wasn't decoration. It was care. That a home wasn't built with square footage, but with intention. Hours later, I received the first text. Open quote, Elliot. Where is everything? Are you kidding me? You left the house empty? Close quote. I didn't respond. Then came another. Open quote. You can't just take things. This is my house. Close quote. I smiled at the phrasing. His house. As if the structure ever mattered. Then a few minutes later, a different tone. Open quote. I didn't think you'd actually leave. Close quote. That one I deleted without reading again. He thought I was bluffing. Men like him always do. I didn't just leave, I left clean. I took what was mine, and in doing so, I left him with what was truly his, the consequences, the silence, the weight of everything he'd never appreciated. And Talia? She would walk into that hollow house later, expecting the curated dream she once envied. Instead, she would find beige walls and creaky floors. No warmth, no aroma, no grace, no Nina, just Elliot and the echo of what could never be replaced. The apartment was nothing special. A third-floor walk-up on the edge of the historic district, faded brick outside, scuffed hardwood floors inside. No balcony, no luxury finishes, just space and silence. And for the first time in a decade, that was enough. I rolled my suitcase to the corner, dropped my keys on the counter, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. It wasn't home yet, but it didn't need to be. It was mine. The first night, I slept on a mattress on the floor, my phone face down and silent, no TV, no music, just the soft hum of a distant street lamp and the occasional creak of old pipes. I didn't cry. I didn't toast to freedom either. I just lay still, feeling the gravity of my own body pressing into unfamiliar ground. The next morning, I woke early. For once, not to make coffee for someone else. Not to pack a lunch or prepare a client file or send an email from Elliot's name as if it were mine. I woke for me. I started with something small, painting the walls. I chose white, not sterile white, but warm ivory, the kind that changes tone with the light. Each stroke over the chipped gray paint felt symbolic, erasing layers of someone else's choices, claiming space with every inch of new color. By the time I was done, my arms ached, but my mind was clear. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my portfolio. It had lived on an old hard drive tucked behind receipts and tax files. Inside were designs I had made before Elliot rebranded me. Restaurants, galleries, concept spaces, all with bold lines, raw textures, fearless palettes. Designs I was proud of, designs I had buried. I uploaded them to a fresh website under a name I had never used before, Nina Vale Interiors. No Hartley, no shared legacy, just me. Within a week, I had 3 inquiries. Small projects, an Airbnb renovation, a boutique yoga studio, a home office for a divorce attorney who said she liked my unapologetic style. I took them all. Every space I touched, I left a little mark of myself. Not obvious, not loud, just present. A reclaimed wood beam here. A hand-painted tile backsplash there. A corner designed for solitude. A nook for resilience. People noticed, and word spread. One morning, I got a message from the editor of Design Deep South, a regional magazine I had once longed to be featured in. She had seen my yoga studio on Instagram. "We love your work," she wrote. "It's bold, intimate, and real. Would you be open to a feature on your design philosophy?" I stared at the email for a full 5 minutes. Then I typed back, "Yes, and thank you." I ended the message with just my name, Nina Vale. Later that afternoon, I passed by one of my old projects, a downtown cafe I had designed for a friend before Elliot convinced me to focus on real estate staging. They had kept everything. The exposed beams, the mismatched tile floor, the communal tables built from salvaged school desks. My design, my vision. Inside, the barista called out, "Hey, you're the one who made this place feel like home." I smiled. "Thank you. That means everything." For the first time in years, I felt seen. Meanwhile, Elliot was unraveling. Word travels fast in our circle, especially when you leave a house gutted and silent. A former mutual acquaintance, Marissa, a luxury realtor who never liked Talia, sent me a text one evening. Open quote, "Girl, just toured your old house. Talia was crying in the pantry. Elliot offered me wine from a solo cup. That place is a graveyard now." Close quote. I didn't reply. But inside, I felt a cold satisfaction. Not from revenge, but from clarity. They had taken the facade. I had taken the soul. A month later, Talia reached out, the audacity. She messaged me from a burner account, probably afraid I'd screenshot her real one. Open quote. I know you hate me, but can we talk? Close quote. I almost laughed. What would we talk about? The way she smiled at me at dinner while sleeping with my husband? The way she posted grateful and blessed captions while helping dismantle my life? Instead, I blocked her. No words needed. I owed her nothing. Closure isn't something you request from the person you betrayed. That night, I lit a candle and poured a glass of wine from a real glass. The apartment still echoed a little when I walked, but it was filling slowly. A thrifted armchair, my grandmother's lamp, art I had stored for years. Nothing expensive, nothing curated for Instagram, but it was beautiful, and it was enough. I stood by the window, watching the city breathe beneath me. No chauffeur waiting, no reservations, no expectations. Just a woman rebuilding her life from the foundation up. Brick by brick, paint stroke by paint stroke, and piece by piece, becoming someone I recognized again. 2 months had passed since I left the house on Wren Street. Since I left the shell of a life that was never truly mine. In that short time, something incredible had happened. I was busy. Not running on empty busy like before. This was soul busy, the kind that fills you, not drains you. My days were now spent sketching mood boards in cafes, sourcing antique fixtures from obscure warehouses, and negotiating contracts under the name Nina Vale. It still felt foreign, hearing people say that name aloud in meetings, but it was mine, entirely. One Monday morning, as sunlight slanted across the windows of my apartment-turned-studio, I received an email with a subject line so simple it was almost suspicious. Design Opportunity, Private Client. No company logo. Just a name, Lucille Quinn. I blinked. Lucille Quinn, founder of LQ Properties, a luxury real estate firm known for developing stunning retreats in the Appalachian Highlands. Her properties were frequently featured in design magazines and travel blogs. Her guest houses were booked a year in advance by celebrities and CEOs. She was, in our world, a quiet legend. I opened the message. Open quote, Miss Vale. I recently visited a yoga studio you designed in Charleston. I was drawn in by the raw texture, the balance between structure and intimacy. It felt human. I believe you're exactly what I'm looking for. I'm building a boutique retreat center in the Blue Ridge Mountains, 10 guest cottages, 1 main lodge, and a meditation hall. I want something bold and grounded, not the usual mountain chic cliche. Are you available to meet? Warm regards, Lucille Quinn. Close quote. My breath caught. I reread it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Me, a woman with no recent press, no awards, and barely a company to her name. And she wanted me? I replied within minutes. Open quote. Dear Miss Quinn, it would be an honor to discuss this project with you. I'm available anytime this week. Thank you for thinking of me. Best Nina Vale, close quote. 3 days later, I was driving north, heart pounding, GPS leading me into the foothills. The roads curved like ribbon through dense forest, trees thick with late summer green. After an hour, the driveway appeared, a gravel path flanked by hand-built stone walls. At the end of the road stood a woman in a slate-gray jumpsuit, hair silver and tied back. Lucille Quinn. She didn't shake my hand. Instead, she studied my face, then said, I had a hunch about you. For the next 2 hours, we walked the land together. She spoke about energy, about soil and sky, about wanting the structures to feel like they rose from the mountain, not landed on it. She asked me questions, listened carefully, never once mentioned budgets or timelines. She wasn't looking for a business deal. She was looking for a vision. By the time I drove back down the mountain, she had offered me the project. Full creative control, a real budget, my name on the plaque, and the first deposit wired within 24 hours. I pulled over at a rest stop and cried in the car. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because, for the first time in my life, someone saw what I could create, not what I could manage or fix or present on behalf of a man with a last name. The weeks that followed were a blur of sketches, meetings, terrain maps, and long nights with my hands deep in clay samples and moss pallets. I designed cottages that curved gently into the hills, with glass walls facing sunrise and fireplaces built from local stone. I brought in Japanese craftsmen to teach traditional joinery. I commissioned hand-woven tapestries from Appalachian artists. Every detail was intentional. Every structure whispered belonging. The retreat had a name now, the Woven Place. Lucille trusted me completely. But success comes with shadows. One Friday afternoon, I walked into a supplier meeting at a new showroom downtown. A sleek, over-designed place full of steel and glass and ego. I had scheduled a review of reclaimed wood options for the main lodge. As I checked in at the front desk, a voice cut across the room behind me. Well, Nina Vale. I turned. Elliot, of course. Looking exactly as expected. Tailored navy suit, jaw tight, that smug smirk he wore like cologne. He hadn't aged a day, just sharpened. Next to him stood Talia, wearing my favorite cream wool coat. She didn't speak. Didn't expect to see you here, Elliot said, eyes narrowing. Still playing designer? No, I said. I'm working. He raised an eyebrow. Working with who? DIY Network? I handed my folder to the showroom rep and smiled. Actually, I'm lead designer on a $12 million retreat in the Blue Ridge Mountains. But I'm sure you'll see it in Architectural Digest soon enough. He opened his mouth, but I turned my back before he could respond. The rep followed me into the showroom, trying to hide her grin. Later, I found out they were there scouting finishes for a condo flip. A safe, soulless project, all quartz and chrome. They could have it. I was designing something that would last. That night, I sat in my apartment, blueprints rolled across my table, fabric swatches fanned like a painter's palette. I sipped chamomile tea and ran my fingers over cedar samples, lost in thought. I had imagined this version of myself so many times. Powerful, independent, unapologetic, and now she was real. I was real. And I was just getting started. The wind carried the scent of pine and promise as the retreat neared completion. The main lodge stood proud against the curve of the mountain, its cedar beams glowing amber at dusk. The cottages, 10 in total, lined the ridge like whispers, each one an invitation to slow down, breathe deeper, exist more honestly. Lucille had flown in from New York to walk the site again. She stood silently in the meditation hall, shoes off, toes brushing the cool stone floor. Then she turned to me. You've built something sacred here, Nina. I swallowed the emotion rising in my throat. I hope it helps people find themselves again. You already did that for yourself, she said, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder. Now let others catch up. It was the highest compliment I'd ever received. I should have felt at peace. Instead, something had begun to claw at the edges of my calm. It started with a letter. A cream-colored envelope slipped beneath my apartment door. No return address. I opened it slowly, expecting perhaps a thank you card, a referral, even a late bill. But what I found was a summons. Elliot Marston versus Nina Vale petition for fraudulent concealment of shared marital assets. I stared at the page until the words blurred. Then I read it again. Fraud? Concealment? Apparently, Elliot was alleging that when I moved out, I had intentionally taken valuable mutual property, specifically artwork, design inventory, antique furniture, and digital portfolios that he now claimed were jointly owned. My chest tightened. He was going after my work, my archive, even my name. I called my lawyer, Damaris Tran, immediately. She was young, brilliant, and had a fury behind her calm that reminded me of a volcano under snow. She met me within an hour at a bistro downtown. Classic narcissistic strategy, she said after skimming the summons. He can't touch your success, so he's trying to discredit your foundation. But the house was in my name. Doesn't matter. What matters is what you can prove about when and how you acquired each item. Inventory, receipts, timelines. My head spun. He's even naming the Woven Place as a contested project, I whispered. She looked up, sharp. He thinks it's connected to your old business? Probably. He's grasping at anything that traces back to his world. Damaris leaned forward. Then we get ahead of it. We go to court not as a defendant, but as a woman reclaiming her name, her work, and her autonomy. We don't apologize, we counterclaim. For what? For emotional and professional damages. For attempted defamation. For weaponizing the legal system to stalk your progress. For weeks, we prepared. I compiled every receipt from my early projects, pulled timestamps from cloud drives showing the development of the Woven Place long after my separation, dug up emails showing client correspondence that proved Elliot had no involvement, nor interest in any of my independent design ventures. But the hardest part was reliving what I had carried with me when I walked out that day. Not just materials or furniture, but sketches, color tests, journals filled with vision. Things I created alone, late at night when he was out, or asleep beside me but worlds away. And now he wanted to label those things shared assets? He had never lifted a brush, never scouted a fabric, never visited a site unless there was a press camera nearby. He hadn't built with me. He had only stood next to me while I built alone. The court date was set for early April. I arrived in a gray suit and calm makeup, my curls pinned back, my silence sharper than any testimony. Elliot sat across the aisle, his jaw clenched, tapping a pen like a nervous tick. Talia wasn't present. Perhaps she'd grown tired of playing the supportive mistress-turned-wife. The courtroom smelled like old books and polished wood. Damaris opened with clarity. Open quote, "This is not a case about fraud. This is a case about freedom, about a woman who dared to leave quietly and rebuild boldly, and a man so threatened by her thriving that he's trying to sabotage it with slander." Close quote. I exhaled slowly. We presented the timeline, showed the documentation, let the evidence speak without drama. Elliot's team tried to push a narrative of mutual sacrifice, of his financial investment in their shared life. But it all fell apart when Damaris pulled out one of my earliest invoices, paid directly to me by a Charleston spa dated 2 months after our separation, with zero trace of Elliot's name. The judge asked only one question. Did Mr. Marston ever co-sign a design contract with your current clients? No, Your Honor. Did he finance your recent business entity? No. The judge looked at Elliot with something close to boredom. Then she turned to me. Miss Vale, you are free to proceed with your work without interference. The court finds no grounds for the plaintiff's claims. Elliot didn't look at me when the ruling was read. He just stood stiff and left the room. I walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight, not triumphant, but whole. There was no parade, no camera flash, just the slow, sacred return to myself. Later that week, Lucille called. Are you all right? I am now. She paused. Then let's finish this retreat. It's ready for people who need what you gave yourself. That night, I stood at the edge of the main lodge terrace, looking out over the darkening valley. The air was crisp, the sky streaked with coral and silver. I thought of all the women I knew who had folded themselves small to survive, who had given pieces of their dreams to men who never deserved them. I thought of the name Vale, and how I had chosen it, not as a disguise, but as a flag. Planted in soil I reclaimed for myself, and as I turned back inside, I felt no weight behind me. Only wind, only forward. The morning of the launch, the air was velvet cool and humming with anticipation. I woke before dawn, heart steady, breath even. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of the past pressing against my ribs. Today, the woven place would open its doors, not just as a retreat, but as a living testament to what a woman could build from the ashes of betrayal. Outside, the sun stretched its fingers across the hills, casting long golden lines between the cabins. The scent of lavender drifted from the herb garden. Staff moved quietly between tasks, lighting lanterns, laying out linen napkins, checking sound systems. Every detail was precise, but gentle, like we were preparing not for a party, but for healing. Guests would arrive by midday. Writers, therapists, chefs, artists, midwives, entrepreneurs, all of them women who had reached out over the last year with stories of loss, of reinvention, of survival. Lucille had flown back in, crisp in linen, already directing traffic in the event tent. You're not hiding, are you? She asked, stepping into the lounge where I was fixing a ribbon on a ceramic display. I gave her a small smile. Just grounding myself. She looked at me, truly looked. You're more than grounded now. You're rooted. I nodded, and ready. By noon, the mountain hummed with quiet voices and unspoken reverence. The crowd wasn't loud. No champagne fountains or DJ booths, just soft jazz, warm cider, and people slowly walking from one room to the next, touching the woven textures on the walls, breathing in the cedar and clay. We offered a guided tour through the reflection garden, the meditation hall, and the ember room, a space designed for symbolic rituals of release. There was a wall of blank paper where guests could write what they were letting go of. Some cried, some laughed, some stood still for minutes before writing anything. It was more powerful than I had imagined. I watched from a corner as a woman in her 60s wrote 3 words and folded them tightly. She turned to me. "Thank you," she said, voice cracking. "This place, it understands silence." I swallowed hard. So do I. As the sun dipped low, we gathered in the main lodge for the welcome address. I stood at the front, lights dimmed, the large fireplace glowing behind me. When I looked out at the sea of faces, each one carrying a story, a wound, a victory, I didn't see strangers. I saw mirrors. "This place was born," I began, "not out of ambition or wealth, but out of emptiness. I had to lose everything I thought made me me before I could find what truly did." I paused. "Some of you have been left. Some of you have done the leaving. Some have been betrayed. Some have betrayed yourselves for far too long. This space is for all of it, for the mess, the rawness, the rebuilding." A quiet gasp, a rustle. "We are not here to forget what broke us," I said. "We are here to remember what we are still capable of creating, even after." Applause followed, but soft, like an exhale held too long. I stepped back, Lucille joining me arms linked. Then I saw him, standing in the back. Elliot. I didn't freeze. I didn't panic. I simply breathed. He was thinner, his suit looser. There was no press crew, no entourage, just a man holding his own silence like a confession. He didn't approach immediately. He waited. Let the event end. Let guests begin filtering out. Let the staff begin stacking glasses and folding linens. Finally, he stepped forward, hesitating near the threshold of the terrace. "Nina." My name on his lips felt like a memory. "Elliot." "I wasn't sure you'd let me speak." "I'm not sure I want to," I replied, calm. He nodded. "I deserved that." There was a long pause between us, the wind rustling between us like a third voice. "I came to say I was wrong. Not just about the lawsuit, about everything. About who you were, what you were capable of." "Why now?" He looked down at his shoes. For once, they weren't polished. "I saw your name in a magazine last month, and for the first time, I felt small. Not because you were shining, but because I had tried to dim it." A longer pause. And then I realized it wasn't just your light I tried to control. It was your escape. I nodded slowly, and yet I escaped anyway. He looked up. "Yes, you did." I studied his face, the tired eyes, the regret that didn't come with demands. "I don't hate you," I said. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Good," I said, stepping past him toward the edge of the terrace. "Because forgiveness is not something I give to restore others. It's something I give to free myself." He exhaled. "I wish I had known you better." "I wish you had tried." And with that, I turned back toward the warm lights of the lodge. He didn't follow, and I didn't look back. Later that night, I walked the grounds alone. The stars above were sharp and defiant, unashamed of their brightness. I passed the cottages, each now glowing with quiet life. Inside, women journaled, meditated, curled up with books and herbal tea. Some cried, some laughed, some rested, all of them healing in their own sacred way. And I too felt something begin to soften. Not just the past loosening its grip, but the future reaching forward. A blank canvas, an open door. And this time, I wasn't walking away, I was walking home.